to our next in our series of Resilience Matters. Today, we are delighted to be joined by Lola Askarova. Lola is an experienced ex-corporate marketeer who I have had the personal pleasure of working with many years ago, and she now works in the arena of mental health and has so many amazing insights. She also runs a blog called Nomad of the Universe, and which is all about happiness, mindfulness, Buddhism, and for anybody who subscribes to it, always has some really amazing insights and interesting things that you've never thought about. So for that reason, Lola, I'm thrilled that you joined us to share some of your thoughts of the world and around resilience. And so let's start off and, tell us a bit about yourself, Lola.
Thank you for that glowing introduction, Kathy. Good to be here. Brief introduction, like you said, I am a marketer, educated as a marketer, and worked as a marketer most of my life. I had short stints in journalism, and I enjoy writing, so I do write quite a bit. I've done a lot of things. Originally, I am from Kazakhstan in Central Asia. I have lived in the UK for a long time now. What else? I guess that's it. So yes, I'm interested in the area of productivity and self-help, self-improvement, consciousness and spirituality and mysticism and all of those things. Yes, I have lots of interests.
I know, and and even some of the stuff you've shared with me have really changed the way that I've thought about different things. And what kind of led you? You obviously said you like your journalism and writing. What led you to start your blog on that?
Yes, that's an interesting question. And I did watch all the talks from this series and really enjoyed them. So lots of interesting themes that have been discussed. So when I started Nomad of the Universe, which was, I think, in 2013, it was 2 years after I had my son. And I went through what I think many women have as an identity crisis after they have a child. And what happens is you kind of question everything, what you're doing in the world, if you're having any impact on the world. And at the time I was working in finance, so with a high net worth individual, so I wasn't making much of an impact, I thought. And I had a couple of things I did. So I left the UK and went to the Netherlands as a life experiment because I really wanted to work in sustainability. And at the time, and actually always, they are one of the leaders in that area. So I went there and tried to kind of find a role. That was, of course, the post-crisis in the Netherlands. So it was really hard to find a job for an English speaker. So ended up coming back. And then in 2015, I actually discovered meditation. I knew about it for a long time. I have a lot of friends who meditate and they've been trying to convince me to do it. But it was really in 2015 that I felt that I wanted to try it. Tried it, changed my life, of course. And I also started studying Buddhism much more systematically than before, which helped me with a lot of things. And preceding your question of what happened in 2015, I was working in a large corporate company, and I had a really challenging, somebody would say right now, toxic, even though that's a generalist word, boss, who, as a result of which I burnt out. So I had my first, the only one, to be honest, burnout. And that all of that led to the creation of Nomad of the Universe, which originally started as a sort of quest for happiness. I think in one of your talks, you talked a lot about happiness and joy. So I really enjoyed that talk. Absolutely. So it started as a quest for happiness, as so many people start their self-improvement, self-help journey. And then it has grown into what's aligned with Buddhist view of resilience, which is slightly different than how we see it in the West.
Yeah. And, you talk about, burnout. And it's interesting. I often wonder, how do you know that point when you're burnt out versus just exhausted or tired? You know, at what point do you then say, no, I'm burnt out, this is it? Do you know, how do you recognise that? Get into that point?
That's a fantastic question. There's lots of advice online, because for different people, burnout manifests differently. So I would invite everyone who's interested to kind of do a quick Google search and have a read. The biggest, for me, it was quite a revelation, actually, because I always thought that I was one of those, people who is always mentally stable. My mental health is always there. Yeah. I don't get impacted by mental health problems or issues. And what was happening at the time is I was having some very strong physical symptoms, to the point that my GP was querying me for IBS and Crohn's. So very strongly manifesting digestive sort of issues. And what was a revelation to me is when I was sat in GP office after they ran a battery of tests on me, and all tests came back negative. And GP looked at me, and he or she, I don't remember at the time, said, listen, everything is okay with you physically. How is your stress level? And, when you have that moment that kind of like a penny drops, and I was like, oh, geez, of course. He actually asked me, he said, how is work?
Interesting.
Like, oh, God, yes. And then, of course, it all connected immediately, and all my struggles with my boss, which until then, thanks to imposter syndrome, I've been saying to myself, oh, it's just you not doing enough, not being enough, you just need to work harder and try harder. But at that point, I just suddenly realized, okay, well, that's what it is. And then the GP talked to me about burnout and said, listen, you literally got your body to the point where your body is manifesting the struggle. But it can manifest differently for different people. I know some people who struggled with weight, so they just suddenly gained a lot of weight, for example, or lost weight. I know people who go for it.
So I think, Alison, you were just like, there's probably just a bit of a time
Sorry,
delay.
I thought you had a question, but basically, yes, it manifests differently for everyone.
And it's fascinating, isn't it, about how, sort of the body and mind are so closely linked, and that, sometimes it's like the body's shouting at you, that your body is saying to you, look, come on, this is just too much. And how wonderful that in 2015 you have a GP who doesn't try and stick you on antidepressants or something, but who actually asks you to make that connection and to think, how is this all working together? Listen to your body, listen to what it's saying to you.
Yeah. And that's fascinating, isn't it? Like you say, I mean, I know my little one, he has a lot of tummy troubles, and the first thing the doctors say to him is, how are things at school? How are you feeling? Because there is, they say gut feel for a reason. It is so closely linked, isn't it? Yeah. So what did you kind of do to get that burnout? Obviously, you've started, this whole journey of self-awareness and finding what's out there. What kind of worked for you? What did you do?
Correct. Exactly. There's a famous book.
Yeah, that's okay, Lola. So there's a famous book you were saying, Lola.
Correct.
Oh, I think
there's a famous book which.
Lola, it's over to you. We'll sit back for a second. Yeah.
Yeah. So first of all, there's a famous book that I haven't read, but it keeps popping up everywhere, called Body Keeps the Score. Yes, and so that's the book that talks about this kind of physical manifestation of problems. So what I did in terms of, sorry, there's a strong lag, so I'm not sure if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So hopefully you can hear me. It's a bit laggy, so chat at me if you can't. But just answering your question, Kathy. So what I did as a result of kind of going to GP and hearing, kind of that penny dropping moment.
Oh. The joys of technology.
We have lost Lola, but
whilst Lola works it out, and actually one question I would be really interested to ask her when she comes back also is, I think it's absolutely brilliant that the GP spotted it, but when we think about managers and leaders and what they can do to support people, I wonder how that burnout was exhibiting itself within the workplace. And it's difficult to say why didn't her line manager pick it up, but there is something there, there's that actually you would have hoped that burnout would have been picked up in the workplace. But I don't be an interesting one to explore, because as she absolutely says, one of the things I certainly train when we're looking at stress management is we always say to people, so if you're looking for someone who's stressed, what's the difference in them? Because if there's a difference, be it weight gain, weight loss, sleeping, not sleeping enough or sleeping too much, all those things, if something has changed in the person you're working with, then that tells you that something has changed in the way they're thinking, that potentially they're under more pressure, that maybe that pressure has slipped into stress, and note the change and then have the conversation.
Totally. And funny enough, I saw excuse me, something on LinkedIn, when we're supporting Mental Health Week about for that very reason somebody noticed a change in their colleague, subtle, but changes of behaviour, and actually they had a conversation, they realised that they were probably had some suicide idealisation, which wouldn't have ordinarily been picked up, but like you say, it's changes in behaviour, changes in pattern, way, maybe if you've got a staff member who's having a lot of time off sick, for various things, maybe they are run down and at that brink. And sometimes I think people are nervous to open up that conversation, managers, to pry. It's so important to do that. Hi, Lola. Lola is back. I'm not sure she can hear us though. Yeah, I am not sure. Lola? Just trying to give you some time to catch up. Yeah, so while we're doing that, in case
I think this could be a case of we might have to invite Lola back at another time when her Wi-Fi's being kinder to her.
Yeah, this is the thing about being live, right? So it's but yeah, I mean, a few other things that she picked up as well is about that meditation. So I've done a meditation circle with Lola. That's why I kind of thought of her for this series, because she has really wonderful insights and brought me into the world of meditation and how it can improve your day, your mind. I know you do morning meditation, don't you, Alison? And
I mean, the science behind it is the proof is there that you actually studies have been done on people who will meditate over a 3-week period, and what you'll see changes in the way the brain is wired. I mean, it's just absolutely fascinating stuff. Lola, I don't know if you can hear us, but we were talking about the proof of meditation.
Yes. Apologies. Something is happening with my Wi-Fi, so I moved the room, so now sitting next to my lovely plant. But yes, apologies for that. But when I dropped off, Kathy was asking a question, and I guess you started talking about what I actually started answering about, which is meditation. So spot on, exactly what I did. I actually did something crazy, something that maybe a regular person wouldn't do. And to me, right now, working in mental health, it actually shows. I can now reflect back and say, don't do that. It's a different thing. I went to a shaman. So me being me, I thought, okay, I need to go and see a soul doctor. And at the time, I was really interested in shamanism. I read several books. I really wanted to see how it works. And there's a very famous shaman in London. She's a white lady with a PhD in psychology. So, and she happens to have studied in Peru with the Shipibo tribe for 5 years. So, very, very fascinating lady. She has released a book recently. I don't know if I can mention her name on this. Her name is Jo Bowlby. She was covered by Tatler magazine. She is a shaman to rich and famous in the UK. And so, for some reason, I thought, okay, I'll go. So it actually ended up being a really, really good experience because she's a therapist technically, right? So I actually, what I would say to others is, instead of going and seeing a shaman, unless you're really interested in that, go see a therapist. It's cheaper and basically very similar outcome. But yes, I went and saw Jo. She was amazing. The experience that I had, I mean, I cannot describe it as an eye-opening. It was beyond that. It was basically, she just instantly told me, she said, listen, you are burnt out because you are not preventing yourself from seeing some of the truth of your situation. And then another thing she mentioned is something that you talked about in one of your other talks, which was, she said, you tied your identity so tightly with work. And work being a toxic place at the moment, you removed yourself from all sources of joy. So her prescription to me, and it's interesting because shaman is most interested in helping you find your soul. It's called ensoulment. They're helping you find your soul, rediscover who you are again. And she said, joy is your number one thing you need to do. Go and find what gives you joy, and go do a lot of it.
Ah, lovely. Now that is the best prescription you could have.
Yeah. And it is understanding what does bring you joy, because like you say, you can, we all do it. We consume ourselves with work, and life just happens to be going by while you're working, without reflecting that. So, how do you recognize what brought you joy and go down that route?
Oh, I love your questions. This is really, really interesting. So, yes, how do you recognize joy? It sounds very straightforward, right? Like, just go do what you like to do. But actually, it's surprisingly, having been on online forums for so long, and I used to be on Quora a lot, like talking to people, and I did some stints as well in like befriending. Like I was a mental health peer on Hear Me app, stuff like that. A lot of people actually don't know what gives them joy, and many actually have no idea where to start even in discovering. Like their identities are so enmeshed with work, or they've suppressed, especially I would say women especially, because they've been in a care role for too long, or they've sacrificed their needs for somebody. There's lots of different scenarios, but basically a lot of people don't know who they are to begin with, and you really need to know who you are to know what gives you joy.
Yeah.
So that's an interesting one. So for a lot of people, looking for joy or for happiness actually triggers a much bigger path of self-discovery and kind of trying to understand who they actually are. But for me, I did know, I did know the sources of joy. For me, the biggest next step was to tackle my enmeshment with work identity. So I just realized that my whole identity was my professional identity. My productivity, how hard I work, the achievements, etc. And then there was nothing else left. Maybe a little bit of mother as well. And then there was no me basically in my life at the time. So I did a lot of changes. Kathy will remember me at the time. That's when I joined the flexible working volunteering group in our workplace, and I dropped my working pattern. I changed it to 4 days a week and 1 day from home. So flexible working pioneers we were. And I started taking decisions instead of kind of seeking career progression, because at the time I was quite ambitious. I actually started looking the other way at downshifting and what that would give me. And I started realizing that time is the biggest, is the biggest wealth for me. It's not how much money I make. It's not the title I have. It's how much time I have to actually live the life. And it's interesting when you start looking for sources of joy and what gives you joy. If you don't slow down and if you don't have enough time, you're not going to be able to discover that because you'll be too busy doing what it is you do. So I started slowing down.
And that's a really good tip, actually, because one of my questions is going to be, how do you even start that self-discovery? Because I'm really quite pleased that you said that. Actually, it's not as easy as you think to work out what gives you joy, what your purpose is. When you're conditioned in such a way for such a long period of time. So for you, part of that was slowing down, taking notice. Was there anything else you done to kind of help that self-discovery?
There were lots of things. So I'm a polymath, which means I go in several directions at the same time, which is extremely frustrating for me because it's really hard for me to, even my blog, when you go to my blog, you will see that I go in different directions at the same time. But it, it is what I am. So in self-discovery, what I found helped. Slowing down definitely helps. What helped me also a lot was querying what Lisa Rankin calls core beliefs. Lisa Rankin has a TED Talk. She's a fascinating woman who actually also, I got the shaman idea from her because she went on a whole, she was a doctor in US. She was very stressed. She didn't know who she was anymore. She wasn't helping her patients, and she went on a whole trip of self-discovery. And she has this really interesting framework, which I'm not sure if she's borrowing from somewhere or not, but she's saying there are 4 core beliefs that we have with us since childhood. One is, do you believe if the universe is dangerous? Like most of us believe that the universe around us is dangerous. Always expect danger. People are there to get you. Nothing is safe. You are not safe. Second core belief is that nothing is certain, which means, bad stuff is coming always. Everything is not going to be good. Worry, worry, worry. Third core belief is that we're all fundamentally alone. You're by yourself, nobody to help you. And a fourth core belief is that there's always loss. Everything is going to disappear, or you're going to lose something, etc. And she talks about reprogramming those. And she says, now that you're aware that these are the 4 beliefs you operate from, can you start, thinking, can you start catching yourself on a daily basis, operating from those beliefs and reprogramming them into universe is dangerous, into universe is purposeful. Whatever you do, whichever scenario you do, whichever route you choose, there's going to be a learning at the end of it, and it's going to pan out exactly the way that it should pan out. Instead of universe is uncertain and unsafe for me, seeing it as an opportunity, as a possibility. If there's a change coming, instead of seeing it as a negative, what's in it that could be interesting? What's in it that actually is going to work for me? Instead of thinking you're alone, believing that we're all one, a fundamentally Buddhist belief, and for different people, it comes differently, this experience. Some people have experiences like mystical experiences, or some sort of where they feel connection with everybody else. Others just feel it when they do something they love. So for different people, it comes differently. But once you feel, not just think and believe, but once you feel that you're one with everybody, you kind of start operating from a different place. And the last one, instead of seeing everything as loss, I will lose this, I will lose my partner, I will lose my child, I will lose myself, you start seeing everything as growth. And of course, it's easy to say, oh, loss is growth. But basically just, what is the universe teaching me? What is this experience teaching me? And just kind of thinking, another Buddhist, operating Buddhist principle is the only thing that's permanent in this life is change. So everything is going to change. Things are going to come and go. And can I see them differently? So not negatively, but, in a different way.
Yeah, totally. And that's kind of like totally the principle that we run our business from, very purposeful. And it is changing that mindset, And it's interesting that you talk about those four things, because they very much feature in in our thinking habits, about how you can embrace change and see it as an opportunity, how we are, how you do seek out relationships and help others, how they're so important. So yeah, that's fascinating. And then you had a break, didn't you, Lola? And now you're in a new space of helping others and
Yes, I did try to switch to social impact for a while, but what was holding me back is I used to be the main breadwinner. My husband used to be a teacher, so I used to be the main breadwinner, and I had to work in corporate jobs. Just needed to bring the money basically. And at some point, he made a leap into corporate as well. So he's a corporate trainer now, so I was actually able to take a step back. Plus we repaid our mortgage, but that's for a different talk. there's a whole movement of people who work very hard to repay their mortgage to be free, and that comes out of that minimalist slowing down movement, which is a fascinating area to also explore. But we repaid our mortgage. He stepped up in his job, and I was able to take a step back and think about what I wanted to do. So actually, instead of getting promoted in my previous workplace, I took redundancy instead, which was another option. And I spent a year, what I call mini retired.
Yeah.
I love mini retirements, and I love little, I love to just pause and do nothing for a couple of months and recharge. And that was fantastic because I've done a lot of volunteering at that point in mental health, in befriending, in social impact, and just been such a fascinating experience. I wrote a book, which I self-published. The book is about love addiction, which very niche subject in mental health. I did a documentary with one of the Dutch organizations. It was just a whirlwind of a lot of stuff. And of course, once somewhere in January 2019, I was getting ready to start looking for a job. And then I was hit, obviously, with lockdown, like everybody else. And my little one was homeschooled at the time, so I couldn't go back to work. And I got stuck basically for another year. So that second year, when I didn't choose to be stuck at home, that was slightly, that was very anxious.
Yeah, as it was for many people. And
Exactly.
because I'm conscious that, as I said, we could talk for such a long time, Lola, but what I'd be interested is your closing thoughts as well. Is, if we can all help other people around us, how do you think the best way to do that? What would be your advice on us helping other people?
Yeah, well, there are so many things to mention here and so many things I've done. But obviously, everybody who feels, if anybody of your viewers feels like they have more questions, I want to reach out and speak about specific areas, especially dealing with unemployment for a year. I know it's relevant to many people after lockdown and at the moment. So I'd be more than happy to chat about that. But I guess there were a couple of things I would say. In this whole idea that I'm coming to recently in Buddhism is, as you remember, I said that I started as a quest for happiness in my self-discovery and also on my blog, and that actually evolved to joy, so seeking the sources of joy and rediscovering joy. But that then inevitably evolved to the next stage, which is when you realize that actually you cannot be joy, challenges. Of course, it's all cyclical, and if you always try to get to the joy bit, you miss a lot of your life, because a lot of your life is not going to be joy, pure joy. So the interesting principle in Buddhism that I'm kind of practicing in my day-to-day right now is, how do you live amidst the suffering, amidst the challenges, amidst the inevitable change in your life, and yet see joy in it. So, for example, if your loved one is unwell and you're in hospital, if you lost somebody and you're grieving, if all those situations, if you lost a job and you have this financial anxiety, will I be able to find it, etc. How do you still, in the midst of that, find something to keep going, and kind of see little joy things, like little joy moments? How do you do that? So I'm kind of moving to that stage now where it's less about maybe happiness, pursuit of happiness, but more about knowing who I am, truly knowing who I am, being at peace more, and having those micro joy moments, so to speak, even if stuff is not happening the way I wanted. So I would say that's probably the best advice, just cultivating that and building that sort of how would I call it, emotional stability base to operate from. So something to come back to, some sort of practice, be it meditation, be it favorite sport, craft, activity, time with loved ones, where you can go and kind of rediscover that peace and then build from that.
I love that. Rediscovering peace. And even if it's chaos, like you say, it's there somewhere, isn't it? So
yes.
It's been absolutely fascinating. And I knew that half an hour goes super quick with you, and there's so many things we can talk about, as I always do when I speak to you, Lola. But really appreciate your time. And for anybody who does want to subscribe to that Nomad of the Universe, I'd really recommend it. I think it's really interesting.
Precisely. Find me on LinkedIn, and thank you so much. What you do with I Have Got This is brilliant. I watched all the talks. I found a lot of useful stuff there.
Oh, thank you, Lola.
Thank you, Lola. So we'll be continuing to have these weekly Resilience Matters, and we love talking to loads of different people, different backgrounds, perspectives on things. So if any of our network does want to come on one of the talks, then please feel free to reach out. You can contact us through our website, which technology is there. We've got this.co.uk, and also on our website we have got 101 ways to build mental strength. And actually on that as well, we are doing to support Mental Health Week a silent coaching session tomorrow, which you'll also find the details on LinkedIn, and anybody's welcome to join for free, as we love to help as many people as possible.
I'm attending tomorrow for sure.
Brilliant. Thank you both. You take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, Lola.
Bye. Bye.